Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie Thomas. I'm the Executive Director at the Chicago Jobs Council, so I'm here with Sarah Labadie, Senior Policy Associate Women Employed. So welcome to today's webinar, sponsored by the Pathways to Careers Network. Before we dive into the meeting agenda, I wanted to review some webinar housekeeping items with you. If you need technical assistance at any time during the webinar, we strongly encourage you to contact ReadyTalk directly, who is the webinar service provider. Their phone number is 1-800-843-9166. Again, that number is 1-800-843-9166. Your phone lines are all muted right now during the presentation. So your phone lines are going to be muted during the presentation. But we encourage you to use the chat window in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen to ask any questions or make any comments during the presentation. You can type questions into the chat window at any time. We're keeping an eye on those questions so that we'll have some teed up during the question and answer period during the presentation. We will be pausing to answer those questions during the presentation, and we will also take some questions over the phone if you're unable to type your questions out. So when we get to that portion, if you want to ask a question out loud, you raise your hand by clicking on the icon in the bottom left corner, and at that time we'll unmute your line. Please be aware of any background noise that could disrupt our conversation. So please be aware of any background noise in your office, like no dishwashing, because you all are doing some dishwashing in your office, if you have any dogs barking in your pet-friendly workplace, etc. So as you heard when you entered, this webinar is being recorded, and we are going to post the webinar to the Women Employed YouTube page and the Pathways to Careers Network page, which is a page on Women Employed's website. We're also going to send out the slides from the presentation, so you will get all of those after the webinar. Okay, first a little bit about the Pathways to Careers Network. So back a few years ago, Women Employed and CJC were looking at all the things that were going on related to the skills gap in Illinois. And so we knew that to address the skills gap, we needed to sort of get together, and we launched the Pathways to Careers Network. That was in 2012, and our goal was to increase college and career success for adult learners with low basic skills. So this network actually advances the missions of both of our organizations. For 45 years, Women Employed has been mobilizing people and organizations to expand educational and employment opportunities for America's working women. For 37 years, the Chicago Jobs Council has worked with its members to ensure access to employment and career advancement opportunities for people living in poverty. And we're now joined in our effort by the Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition, whose mission is to help Chicago's adult education organizations secure resources and training so that underserved adult learners can become economically successful, and reframing the adult basic education as a critical public policy issue. So for today's webinar, we wanted to do a couple of things. So our presenters today will be Sarah, myself, and we have a couple of great guest speakers to talk about these state plans in action. And what we want to do is to provide an overview of some key state plans that Illinois has developed since 2016, and then take a deeper dive into 3 important trends that overlap across the plans, and hear from our guest speakers, who are practitioners, about how they are addressing each of these trends in their work. So the 3 trends we're going to look at more closely today are digital literacy, partnerships, and work-based learning. So first, I want to talk a little bit about what the plans are that we're talking about. So we hope that everyone on this webinar is familiar with at least one of the plans that we are featuring today. The primary plan, which helped to lead the development of the other state plans, is the WIOA Unified Plan. That is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the new federal law that was implemented in 2014, and its unified plan. And it's the federal, so WIOA is the federal program that governs workforce and adult education, as well as career and technical and vocational rehabilitation programs. But this plan really set the stage for the state's work in workforce and adult education. So the WIOA law, the federal law, requires the governor of every state to outline a 4-year strategy for the state's workforce development system through this unified plan. So the unified plan, the WIOA unified plan, includes 4 core federal programs. Title I, which is workforce development programs, which are operated through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, or DCO. Title II, which is adult education, which is operated through the Illinois Community College Board. Title III is Wagner-Pizer, which is unemployment and labor services run through the Department of Employment Security. And Title IV, vocational rehabilitation services run through the Illinois Department of Human Services. So we're very lucky in Illinois. I'm being a little sarcastic, but we have each of these titles in a different state agency, which then requires a significant amount of coordination at the state level. I will also mention that I misspoke just a few minutes ago that career and technical education is not in this state plan. The WIOA Unified Plan is designed to provide a vision for the governor's integration of workforce education and economic development policy, and it also serves as a federal compliance document to the U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Education. It outlines the vision, principles, and goals for the integration of these services in the state. So that unified plan was done in 2016, and then federal law required a modification of the plan after 2 years. So just this year, the state is submitting its modification to the U.S. Department of Labor. And that is because, of course, the labor market has changed, and they also want to feature some successes under the previous unified plan. So during a similar period of time, between 2016 and 2018, Illinois also undertook 2 strategic plans, a workforce education strategic plan and an adult education strategic plan. While each is its own, they do some intentional alignment between them. It's really important to point out that these 2 plans were developed by Illinois, so they weren't required by federal law. Illinois decided to do them, and they both were led through the Illinois Community College Board. The Workforce Education Strategic Plan, completed first, is meant to utilize the overall strategic planning and related processes to achieve alignment of the community college system and the state's workforce development system with economic development directions and workforce needs, thereby creating a talent pipeline that fuels economic growth and creates career pathways for all citizens of Illinois. It is worth noting that overall in Illinois, the community college system is actually the largest provider of workforce training services in the state. So it's important to remember their role in workforce training. The Adult Education Strategic Plan's vision is to create learning opportunities that align with statewide education, training, and employment strategies to ensure that all adult learners have access to and success across services that are cohesive, coordinated, and innovative to promote better economic opportunities, greater equity, and sustainable career pathways. So we will be sending, as I mentioned, we will be sending out the slides, but the plans can all be found online. So here, when you get the slides, you'll have links to where all the plans are. The WIOA Unified Plan is on the main website, the Illinois WorkNet website. You can find both the 2016 plan and the 2018 modification there. Because the Workforce Education Strategic Plan is primarily run through the Illinois Community College Board, it's found on their website. Their website is iccb.org. And both the full plan and an executive summary are there. And then finally, the Adult Education Strategic Plan is also available through the ICCB website. That plan, including an executive summary and a detailed action plan, is at iccb.org/adult_ed. Okay, so the plans and the modifications were developed during a similar time frame, as I mentioned, and leadership from key state entities, especially DCO and the Illinois Community College Board, were involved in all three of the plans. And while they do have different purposes and cover some overlapping content in terms of workforce and adult education, there is very intentional alignment because they are intended to work together. So many of the same stakeholders had an opportunity to inform each of the plans, and in some ways, some of the processes were actually kind of iterative. So if something had happened in a previous planning process, some of the lessons and framework were brought into the next planning process. So today, we just wanted to explore a few areas that are overlapping that we think are really important to the field and really interesting. So again, on digital literacy, partnerships, and work-based learning. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now, who's going to get us started on digital literacy.
And Carrie, we do have one question that I do think it's worth answering at this point in the webinar, which is, did the State Workforce Board have a role in developing the other two plans? And the answer to that is yes. As Carrie mentioned, there is a lot of overlap in not just the partners who are at the table for all the plans, but also sort of intentionally duplicating some of the plans' work to ensure that partnerships were part of all the plans that Illinois was putting out there. So there was representation from the State Workforce Board on each and every plan committee as it was developed. All right, so moving on. So to talk a little bit about digital literacy, which is the first piece that we identified as a trend in state plans. And let me say to start, well, A, I'm Sarah Labadie, and B, this is not the only trends, or not these three trends among the state plans, but these were three trends we really wanted to highlight as sort of key pieces of work that are that are in the national landscape and also in the state landscape right now as sort of the most important pieces, or some of the most important pieces of WIOA, workforce education, and adult education. So the first is digital literacy, and what we mean when we say digital literacy is looking to WIOA, so the original WIOA. It references the Museum and Library Services Act of 2010, which defines digital literacy as defined here, the skills associated with using technology to enable users to find, evaluate, organize, create, and communicate information. So that's the overall definition for digital literacy. And you'll see here at the bottom of the slide, I also wanted to reference the North Star digital literacy tool. I know this is a tool being used in Chicago, which gives providers a way to teach digital literacy and for learners and clients to receive a certification to show their digital literacy competencies. To step back, so just I don't want to go through all of the citations of digital literacy within the plans, but I do want to say in the WIOA plan, the 2018 modification suggests that we include the assessment of digital literacy as a basic skill and provide services to participants in gaining these skills through career services and through additional services in career pathway bridge programs. So digital literacy is now sort of housed under this idea of essential employability skills, might be the framework you've heard in Illinois, but housed under this idea that it is a basic skill required for jobs and required for future education as well. And then the Adult Education Strategic Plan takes that a step further with a number of actions that are linked to digital literacy, but it includes in its guiding principles that we should promote the use of digital literacy in adult education for stronger transitions to the labor market. Basically, it is a requirement of a solid foundation for the labor market, and also ensure that student technology competencies by encouraging programs to include problem solving in technology-rich environments as part of the services and curricular offerings. That's just a snapshot of how digital literacy is captured in 2 different plans. It's not the entirety of it, but that is one little piece of digital literacy amongst the plans. I'm now going to turn it over to AJ Jaramillo, who is our presenter on digital literacy. He's a shipping and receiving technical instructor with the Greater Westtown Training Partnership. And you have his email here in case you have questions for him later. AJ is a lifelong resident of Humboldt Park, the Greater Westtown community, and has more than 10 years of experience as a lead and or supervisor in shipping and receiving. Mr. Jaramillo is also a U.S. Air Force veteran with a 7-level supervisory experience, and he graduated from Triton College. So AJ, I'm going to open the floor to you. Can you give us an example of digital literacy within Greater Westtown's programming?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
All right, good. So we use digital literacy through North Star Digital Literacy. We use modules that have been asked by our employer relations that best help our graduates in order to perform in the workplace environment. So although there are more than 6 modules with North Star Digital Literacy, we use 1 through 6 primarily. And it begins with just basic computer use through the World Wide Web, using email, up to Microsoft Word. Along those lines, we also touch base on Windows 7 and any operating software that the industry is going to start using. So those are the main focus points that we use for our students before they leave into the workforce from our training center. I think what's important to note is that when it comes to digital literacy, and particularly our program, we have participants that are either have been out of the workforce for a while and maybe don't realize the impact of the computer use and the ability to access things online. So that's very helpful when they come through our training program to be able to add this other skill to things that they learn when it comes to the hands-on training that we do here within the shipping industry. Sorry. So we're also starting to talk about adding other services, such as the Applied Digital Skills that Google offers. These are free programs that anyone can go access. There are some programs that are about writing a resume, creating an event, planning finances. So these are things that we're looking to implement, which will only assist the North Star Digital Literacy learning that our students already do. Are there any questions specifically that I'd be able to answer?
So AJ, I do see somebody with a question, and I'm going to unmute the line if I can. I see a hand raised. Don't seem to be able to unmute. Oh, there we go. Gianna, did you have a question?
This is Gina. Hello, this is Gina.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, how are you?
For AJ?
Yes, I do. Hello, Mr. Jaramillo. I work with Southwest Solutions for a community organization, and we have just started offering computer classes, basic computer classes. And we found that there is a language challenge because a lot of our students speak other languages, either Spanish or Arabic or French. But we're teaching them English because we know that when they take the North Star assessment, that it will be in English. But we have supplemented some of the instruction with different videos and the.
I think we either lost you or. I think we've lost you, unfortunately. I don't seem to be able to hear you anymore. I am going to remute your line, but if you, but AJ, I think the gist of her question may have had to do with implementing digital literacy skills for non-English speakers.
Yes, so I was just Literacy Advisory Board, and they were talking about how North Star is starting to offer some Spanish language modules. I think 1 and 2 has been translated, and that's being assisted by the UIC in Chicago. So I'm not 100% sure if they're live right now, but I know they're working on that for Spanish in particular. When it comes to add-on training or training that will enhance North Star Digital Learning or any of these other applied digital skills type of learning, the best resource is obviously what we have at hand. So I am a Spanish speaker, and whenever I can, I will translate, and I'll make handouts, and I'll assist as much as possible. So I think the idea is to make sure that you have the access to better assist the participants within your program. And I don't think there's like a, step 1, step 2, step 3 type of situation yet. We're kind of learning how to do this and how to best serve our participants. So I think as long as it follows the course that's set with whichever type of digital literacy program that you're using, I think it's going to be very beneficial. Obviously reaching out directly to the specific digital literacy curriculum program that you're using, I'm sure they'll be able to assist you in other ways, maybe show you other videos in order to help that course progress.
AJ, we do have a couple other questions. One of them is, could you mention the Google program again? A couple of people missed it.
It's great. It's free for everyone. I've gone on it. I have a great time. It's called Applied Digital Skills. So if you go to your so if you go to Gmail or Google.com and type in Applied Digital Skills, they'll give you free lessons. They're pretty cool, and they end up grabbing your attention. Some videos that have been out to teach people about how to use computers can be a little draining, maybe filmed a few years back, but these are pretty up to date. The graphics are great. The presenters get to the point, and then you can move on through the lesson plan. They also have availability to use this as a classroom setting. So you'd have to dig in a little bit deeper and sign up as an instructor through G Suites, which is on Gmail or Google.com.
Great. And one more question that came from our registrants at the beginning is, which digital literacy skills should be prioritized for the best employment outcomes? And I know you may not be able to speak to that for everything, but for shipping and receiving, have you identified some skills that you think are the most necessary for good employment?
Yeah, we have. We've since we work within the industry that uses a lot of email, especially now we're moving more into an e-commerce type of warehousing. There has to be the communication to receive emails, send emails, have the appropriate etiquette, and then also know how to search the web in order to fill out some requisitions that are needed. So there's a lot of work on filling in the appropriate text boxes, how to submit things, how to get responses back. So those are very helpful. When it comes to someone who has no concept of a computer, the Module 1 on North Star Digital Literacy, it covers all the bases. So just from how to turn the computer on to where the volume button is, and then just what the desktop looks like. So I think for our industry in particular, the shipping and receiving logistics industry, we're really looking at using the email navigating the internet, basic computers, and then Microsoft Word is helpful, but once you get into the position of shipping clerk or receiving clerk, then that's when the skills of Microsoft Word and word processing really help.
And can I ask, AJ, how was it that you determined what skills were most helpful to the population you're serving?
We actually have an advisory board that meets every 2 times a year. So this is our employer partners. We come in a group of 8 to 12 people from HR department to production managers, shipping leads, and we talk about our program, and then they let us know what the needs are, and we try our best to accommodate the teaching style to the modern or the up-to-date needs that our employer partners need. So when we talk to them, especially when it comes to computers or dealing with anything that has to do with an electronic device, they let us know what is needed without going off topic. In the logistics and shipping and receiving industry, they're starting to use a lot of electronics such as tablets or wearable computers for scanning items. So even the use of touch screens and being able to find information is very helpful to teach our participants.
Great. Thank you so much, AJ. We have no more questions at this time. I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us today.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Thank you so much for having me.
So moving on to partnerships. So I'm not going to waste time explaining partnerships. We all have them in some capacity. We all know what they are. But I do actually want to thinking expansively about partnerships. So not every partnership requires an MOU and a data sharing agreement and a formalized written piece of the partnership. When we think about partnerships, a lot of the times we're talking about informal meetings or relationships even. So updating people every once in a while, meeting every 6 months to see if there are areas for collaboration. I think one of the features of the term partnership is that it feels like it has to be very official, very formalized, and it doesn't always have to be that way. But in these plans, they're considered very expansively. So it's not just partnerships between your adult education program and the credit program at your college. It's partnerships between the adult education program and adult literacy programs in the city, or the workforce development programs in your city. So it's thinking really outside the box about where can you find a student, how can you develop a student-centered approach to ensure that you have a pipeline of students coming in, students or clients coming in, but also that there's somewhere for them to go if they're interested in not just a job once they finish your program, but more education or additional training. And that within that as well, we'll talk about it later, but work-based learning is one of those options. So that's additional training where they might come back to you or stay on site with you as well. So if our goals are to give our clients and students a smooth experience and to really center their comfort, we need to create partnerships with the organizations and institutions that serve our clients before we do and then that serve them after we do. In the state plans, partnerships is probably the single biggest trend in the state plans. Adult Ed plan calls out relationships among the adult education system, community colleges, community-based organizations, workforce, and employers to provide students with career exploration activities, work-based learning opportunities, and ICAPS/Integrated Education and Training Model transitional experience. The Workforce Education Strategic Plan is very similar, making it its first goal to build sustainable, deeper partnerships among K-12, adult education, career and technical education, workforce development, including corporate training, economic development, and social service agencies. Agency collaboration and partnership is also a cornerstone of the WIOA plan, which includes, as Carrie mentioned earlier, 4 required partners. So partnerships are really a big piece of this work if we're going to serve our students well. And to talk a little bit about partnerships, I have Abram Garcia, who I'm going to unmute now. Abram is a program manager at Central State Fair here in Chicago, a workforce development and education organization that works with marginalized and disadvantaged residents from across the city of Chicago and suburban Cook County to improve their quality of life through education and training and employment programs. Mr. Garcia enjoys the challenge of being innovative in developing programs to meet the demands of an ever-changing economy and is working to develop career pathways to the construction industry for minorities, women, veterans, and returning citizens. Abram, so how does Central State Fair work with other community-based organizations to establish partnerships?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So my immediate response to how it's done is pretty simple. It's just time and perseverance. There's no real secret sauce or anything to it. CBOs are many times operated with a lean staff, meaning one person usually has a lot of responsibilities and limited extra time. But at the end of the day, we're more or less working to accomplish similar goals and at times even targeting very similar populations. So my objective when I establish partnerships is to think, what can SARE do for a partner? Are we able to support? Can we add value to a program? Or just something that we might be doing better? Sometimes we're even doing a lot of the same thing that another CBO is doing, but just in a different area. So many times we look to other CBO partners to collaborate on grant proposals so that we can have a greater impact, we can have reach a larger scale, and ultimately serve more people than we could do alone.
And so how is Central SARE working with city colleges of Chicago, not just other community-based organizations?
In terms of City Colleges of Chicago, I've learned that they actually want to work with CBOs. The thing with the city colleges, though, is that they have a lot of resources internally already to offer students. But what makes the CC such a great partner is the fact that they have so many resources already. So it's a matter of understanding the resources available at the city colleges, or any community college for that matter, and then leveraging those resources with your agency's resources to provide stronger career pathways.
So can you give us an example of a partnership at SARE where students transition from programming like Bridges into career pathways offered at city colleges or other community-based training programs?
Yeah. So many of the out-of-school youth or adult populations that we work with are just simply not ready to jump into a college or occupational training program. They may lack reading or math skills, they do not have a support system in place, or maybe they just lack the positive behaviors that they need to succeed. So a bridge program is a great way to help them overcome these challenges. At SARE, we have a bridge program for both healthcare and the construction trades. They range about from 8 to 10 weeks. They cover material on math and reading, employability and soft skills, and an intro into technical work-based knowledge. Upon completion, we have a couple options. One option is the WIOA program. We can leverage the WIOA program to help cover the cost of a career pathway at the city colleges, or to pay for a training program at a partner community-based organization. One thing that's unique about the construction industry, though, is that the only credential you need is a high school diploma to start employment. More specifically, another example I'd like to share, I'm not sure how many people might be familiar with the Construct program. Construct is more or less a bridge program for the construction trades. It was spearheaded by ComEd. It now includes Nicor Gas, Peoples Gas, and about 45 different construction companies. The agencies that work the program, they're all community-based organizations. There's 8 of us, and we're all around the Chicagoland area. Alone, SARE only services 10 participants. But together, this past year, we serviced 105. So that's 105 individuals from all throughout Chicago. We're hitting target populations such as the African American population, Latino population, women, returning citizens, and veterans.
So in terms of transitioning students, why is it important for CBOs to have strong partnerships with other organizations and educational institutions? SARE unfortunately does not offer everything. Our customers come to us for guidance on how to find their path and directions on how to get to their goals. We can spend up to a year, sometimes longer, especially with our youth participants, working with them through their career pathway. They say it takes a community to raise a child. Well, it also takes a community to help someone achieve their academic or career goals. So it's important to maintain your partnerships. It allows us to better serve the people that we're trying to serve. And kind of what you mentioned about the importance of partnerships and the initiatives that are being brought out, the reality is that's what the funders are looking for. So if you don't have strong partnerships in place, or if they're insufficient, at the end of the day, these programs are not going to get funded. So that's another thing that I feel is very important. So, Abram, as I know that Central State SARE is currently part of the Career Foundations Consortium, which is made up of 12 community-based organizations consisting of both adult education and workforce development providers. So for those of you on the call who are not familiar with Career Foundations, it's a career exploration and goal-setting tool for adults, a short course that takes students from self-awareness activities and learning about local education and training opportunities to the creation of a personalized educational plan and timeline to get to college or training, ultimately leading to a family-sustaining job with the possibility of advancement. Abram, can you speak to the value the consortium adds in terms of partnerships?
It's really helping to build those partnerships. So the consortium brings together CBOs that are doing very similar work, but who are trying to accomplish, who are also trying to accomplish very similar goals. But obviously, we all have our particular niche and strengths. One of the cool things about this consortium is they bring together community-based organizations from all over Chicago, just like the Construct program. So it puts us at the same table, allows us to discuss our initiatives, provides us a space to share our resources, and it's ultimately helping to break down the silos that we sometimes find ourselves in. So SARE is located in the west parts of Chicago, but we have people that come from far south, far north. So it's important to know the resources available all throughout Chicago, and it's even better when you have someone you know you can call for help.
Well, I'd like to open up the floor for questions, Abram. And we did have a few questions come in during registration. And one of the questions kind of speaking to the consortium is how adult literacy fits in with workforce development. Specifically, you know, I know you mentioned that you're part of the consortium, but in some places, people are resistant to adding literacy to their programming and really focused on only getting people jobs. How did you kind of walk that line of maybe having different goals and outcomes and coming together on that piece?
By not providing that service of adult literacy or education, you are now limiting your services. So there's a group of, there's a population out there that, as I mentioned about our bridge, they're not ready to jump into a vocational training or a college. They lack certain skills, math, reading, employability, soft skills. So now you're not able to service that population. So if you're trying to service a greater population, you need to be able to provide that service.
And do you, this is sort of a tough question, but is there a type of partnership that you found most helpful as you've been building them out?
Specific partnership most helpful? Not really, because there's no quick fix. Career pathways, they're multifaceted, so your partnerships also have to be multiple. When I walked in with SARE, we did a lot of youth and adult programming, but we also did bridge programming, and I learned a lot of other agencies weren't doing bridges. But now adult education and bridge programming is a very popular thing.
And then can I ask, how do you identify your partners and the role that they play?
Identifying partners, it was mentioned earlier about it's not necessarily always having to be a professional partnership. Sometimes it's an informal, communication that you're having, and it's through those conversations that you learn what other agencies are doing. And in hearing what they're doing, you start to identify, well, I'm missing that piece, or maybe I can fill in something that they don't have. And slowly, as I mentioned, one of the hardest parts about how we do it is time, right? So with time, as you learn kind of trends and what's going on in the economy, you start to identify those pieces of the puzzle, and then you try to find the partners. Hopefully you have them. If not, then you got to continue your networking to identify people that you can work with, to deliver the programming and the services you're trying to deliver.
A question from the field. So when do you use written documents that clarify roles and responsibilities? Do you have at what point do you start to really nail down specifics?
Well, if you're trying to write for a proposal, then as soon as that agreement is made that there's mutual benefit to working together, you try to put it on paper. Sometimes you just need letters of support from partners, right, just to show that you have partnerships. Those are, I sometimes don't think they're as needed, but if you have a part of your proposal where if you don't have a certain MOU, you have to understand you're not going to get funded if you don't have a piece of that proposal that's being asked for. So it's really on you whenever you feel you kind of need it, or whenever you feel you're being asked for it.
And then one final question. So how are partnerships with community colleges going for you, and what challenges remain, and what would you like community colleges to do that they're not currently doing?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I guess maybe being more accepting of the not perfect student. A lot of our participants, they come with many challenges. And a lot of them struggle with what some might think of the simple behaviors, showing up on time, putting in 100% of the effort. Nor do we want to lower the quality of the education that's being provided, but maybe developing some sort of programming that will enable, the not-so-perfect student to enroll and succeed in the city colleges.
Thank you so much, Abram. I really appreciate you joining us for the webinar, and I'm sure everybody else does too. We're going to move on, so I'm going to remute your line, and thank you again. So our final trend in state plans is work-based learning. Work-based learning is an overarching term that is used to describe programs that intentionally and actually combine real work that is paid with skills acquisition. So unfortunately, there is no single definition of work-based learning. It's referenced in all of our plans. It's referenced in a number of other places. But to kind of give a sense of what it looks like, it's generally training that provides both work site, so on-site, and classroom components. The most robust, effective work-based learning, or WBL if you're looking at the slide, is where individuals are actually paid during the work site component so that they're earning income while getting work experience and critical job skills. Often this is referred to as learn and earn. So there are some types of work-based learning that you may be familiar with, your organization or agency may currently be working on. So one is transitional jobs, another is social enterprise, on-the-job training, probably one that almost everyone is familiar with, internships, and then also apprenticeships, which are also sort of brought up as a really key strategy these days. So to talk just a little bit, transitional jobs pay wages, they're supported with case management, and they're basically intended to be a trial job. Social enterprise There are a number of social enterprises here in the city, is a business model with a triple bottom line. They want to make money, like all businesses. They want to provide jobs, and often they support a mission. So they may be, for instance, hiring formerly incarcerated individuals. And then internships, as many of us know, are both paid and unpaid. They are often or sometimes required for some sort of occupational license and are usually shorter term, less than a year. And then apprenticeships happen both in and out of the union context, although I think historically have been very union-driven, these days much less union-driven. There are jobs with specific training that leads to higher skilled permanent jobs and better pay. These models overlap in design, but each has a unique feature or is best suited to a population of job seekers that have unique and specific needs. In general, work-based learning programs are great models for people who have little to no work experience, either because they're young or because they've been out of the labor market for a long time or because they've never worked. They're also great for low-income unemployed adults who need skills to secure better jobs but don't have the luxury of being in a long skills or education program because they need to be paid and work in order to support themselves and their family. Just a quick, why is this a great strategy? I mean, it gives people the opportunity to acquire skills and work experience. There's only so much that an academic setting, I think, can offer people in terms of how to conduct themselves in a workplace and what an atmosphere at work looks like. Obviously, the best strategies give people an ability to earn an income and support the persistence of getting a credential because they see the sort of ultimate outcome of what could be their life. And the benefits of earning a wage, obviously, are Social Security taxes, eligibility for tax credits, and things of that nature. They also strengthen an individual's network, even if they won't ultimately go on to earn a job at the place where they had a work-based learning experience. They now have a larger network of people to help secure a job at the end of their training, and then it provides a pool of trained candidates who have some on-the-job experience. Expanding work-based learning opportunities is found in the goals of every state plan to help ensure workers are getting workplace skills that are difficult or impossible to teach in a classroom. And we have with us here today Mollie Dowling. Mollie, I'm going to unmute your line right now. Mollie is the Executive Director of OAI Incorporated. OAI's mission is to create an environment in which all people who desire to do so can access education, training, and work that will allow them to sustain and enjoy safe, secure, and fulfilling lives. Based in Chicago, OAI is a nationally recognized pioneer in workforce development. Their work opens career pathways, fuels business success, promotes health, safety, and the environment, and supports community development. For more than 40 years, they've been delivering real economic benefits to individuals, employers, and communities across the country. Mollie, can you give us an example of work-based learning within OAI's programming?
Sure, Sarah. Thanks so much for asking OAI to participate in today's webinar. Thanks for that nice overview of OAI and who we are. So OAI is utilizing work-based learning strategies within our programs in the manufacturing sector out of our South Suburban office. We're primarily supporting paid internships for young adults ages 18 to 24 with partnering manufacturing companies, which is work we've been doing for about the past 5 years. We started with the Manufacturing Careers Internship Program that was developed with Rand Haas and Business and Career Services, or BCS, out of Arlington Heights. Their model included a 5-week boot camp with job readiness, OSHA safety, and forklift certifications and tours of companies, followed by an 8-week paid internship. This basic structure was used to model the Partnership's Opportunity Works program, rolled out last summer, which we also operate in partnership with BCS. The primary difference between Opportunity Works was that they mandate a reconvening day during the internship period, so young people are only working 4 days a week instead of 5. We've always been pretty enthusiastic about this model for 2 primary reasons. The first is that our manufacturing sector partnership employers have asked for it and continue to deeply support it. It is one strategy for addressing their need to attract young talent. With their aging workforce and low unemployment, they are not seeing young faces applying for their open positions. This internship model provides them the opportunity to get to know a young new worker without the liability of hiring them directly at first. The demand for interns is high. In each cohort, we have far more slots with companies than program participants. Our challenge is with recruitment, not placement. The second reason is because the outcomes are very high. About 80% of the young people who complete their internships are hired on full-time by their employer. And even when an intern doesn't work out because of attendance or performance, companies keep coming back and asking for additional interns. We continue to tweak and improve the program model each cycle, and last year we were able to make dramatic improvements through the DCEO-funded Youth Career Pathways and Youth Pre-Apprenticeship programs. Through the additional DCEO resources, we were able to offer more technical skills during the program through CNC machining and at our Maker Lab. We also supported the young participants to compete in the regional Southworks Robotics Olympics. These were effective enhancements, and once the students were ready for their internships, they were already very marketable. Employers consistently told us that they wished they could clone the graduates because of how valuable they were. We listened to this request and developed an idea about scaling our ability to match intern candidates with area employers. This will be a new intelligent website linked with Illinois WorkNet, currently in development and scheduled to launch in 2019. Next slide, please. I wanted to also give you a real example of the power of these work-based learning programs through the success of a recent graduate. Christopher Green, shown here with one of OAI's business account executives, was a recent participant in the DCEO-funded Youth Apprenticeship Program. He took classes in CNC machining at Rich East High School as a senior. He was a member of our in-school cohort, which were all students brought back to their main campus from the alternative school. At the beginning of the year, the likelihood of him graduating in May was very low. His first day was a rocky one, filled with disruptions, jokes, and inappropriate comments. We had to pull him out of the class in order to address the constant interruptions. Our conversation centered around taking the program seriously and having a sense of urgency in securing employment to support himself and his family. Chris promised us that he would apply himself and participate fully in the program, and he has lived up to that promise. He worked closely with us, thrived in the Maker Lab workshops, earned 2 CNC NIM certifications, forklift and OSHA safety, eventually becoming a model student. He was able to graduate on time and was placed into his internship with Triton Molex as a CNC machinist over the summer. His hard work and consistent efforts to improve were noticed, and his internship was even extended for an additional 2 weeks. And then his company offered him a full-time position paying $14 an hour. Chris is ecstatic. He loves what he's doing and the company he's working for. Chris is an excellent example of how the program should work. We provide the training, guidance, and support necessary to put him in the best position to succeed. He responded with a commitment to work, to apply the lessons learned, and was rewarded with the opportunity for a career in manufacturing. Triton is thrilled to have him on board and is already asking us when the next interns will be available. These are the kind of stories that fuel our work and our belief in this work-based learning model. Although we are currently only implementing this model in our manufacturing sector work, we are contemplating how to apply it to programs in other sectors such as healthcare, IT, construction, environmental remediation, and solar installation. We believe it is a promising practice and are seeking funding to implement the supportive wages that will allow us to offer it to employers for free. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mollie. So we did have a few questions that people asked when they registered for the webinar. So one of those was about strategies for partnering to offer work-based learning opportunities to adult learners who are still working on basic skills, need to be working, but aren't yet ready to transition to a career. How have you been able to do that? Or have you?
Yeah.
Well, we're primarily doing this work-based learning through the young adult programs. So we're not working with, the transitional job seeker. Really, it's more that new worker, and we're leveraging WIOA funds for out-of-school youth to do it. So, however, I know that a lot of companies are implementing more and more apprenticeship programs, and so I think trying to get someone in a program that includes the earn and learn portion, especially in an industry like manufacturing, is a real new opportunity. I mean, I think the drawback for the worker is that likely the initial wages are a little lower than they might be looking for, but it could mean a commitment for employment for at least 5 years.
Great. So can you speak a bit more to some of your recruitment challenges and how you're working to overcome them?
Yeah, we've been really trying to be creative about this by using more and more technology, videos, and social media. We just find, especially when recruiting for these programs for young adults, that it's very difficult to attract them into an industry that they are totally unfamiliar with, like manufacturing. And so we work closely with a lot of our regional high schools, and we try to be present at every career fair that's available, and then connect with as many folks as possible through social media. So we've been using tools on Facebook, for instance, that allow people to sign up and register through the Facebook app so that they can submit their information, and then we reach back out to them to bring them in for orientations and to tell them more about the programs. It's just, it sort of never ceases to be a challenge to find enough folks, especially those that can meet all of the program requirements. And for our manufacturing programs, that includes a drug screen. So that's another big challenge, is finding folks, enough individuals to fill the cohort that can successfully pass that drug screen and that can pass the other requirements, such as bringing their income verification and passing a reading and math test.
And how have you overcome any transportation issues for your candidates getting to and from work?
That also continues to be a big problem, especially in the southern suburbs where there's even less availability of public transportation. We always include the cost of transportation assistance in all of our grant proposals. So all of our program participants will be eligible for either a PACE pass or a Metro Pass, or to get a gas card for their car. Additionally, if there's a special circumstance, we've had a couple of instances where individuals were trying to get back and forth to their internship, and we needed to get them a lift. So we used Lyft or Uber to get them there at the time that was required. In a couple of instances, this was because they lived more than a mile from the local bus stop, or the company was more than a mile from the local bus stop, and the schedule did not fit the shift schedule. So we had to figure out how to be creative with that. In another program, we have decided to include the cost of bikes for all of the students so that they can use that when traveling short distances. So we're trying to be as creative as possible, but it continues to be a huge challenge for all of our programs, especially those in the suburbs.
Great. Thank you so much, Mollie. We really appreciate you taking the time today.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you especially to AJ and Abram and Mollie for sharing your experiences. To everyone who joined us for the webinar, we know that the plans themselves are really dense and difficult to wade through. We do that occasionally, so we hope we've given you a little more guidance as you seek to carry out the state's goals and provide your clients and your students with programs and services that meet their needs. We hope that these topics were relevant. We actually know that there's a lot of work happening in all of these areas, and these are highlights for the state. So thank you so much for joining us. And as a reminder, you will be getting from Women Employed the slides after the webinar, and they'll be posted and shared the webinar itself. So thank you again. Have a great afternoon.